Okay, in this video, I'm going to pit the Samsung Galaxy Nexus, the latest and greatest Android phone that runs Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich and runs on Verizon's network. And I'm going to pit that versus the Motorola ATRIX 4G that runs on AT&T's network and runs Android Gingerbread. Now currently I have a contract with Verizon for this phone and I have a contract for AT&T for this phone. But I only have 14 days because I bought this from Best Buy. I have 14 days to get out of this contract if I want to, or I could do an early termination fee and get out of my AT&T contract. So what this video is for me to weigh the pros and cons of both of these devices, and at the end of the video I'm going to let you know which device I'm going to keep and which device is going to go. So the first category we're going to cover is the operating system. Now, like I said, this is the latest and greatest operating system here from Android. This is Android 4.0 Ice Cream Sandwich. I really love it. I love the fact that they got rid of the buttons down here and you have your software keys down here. I love the interface. It's buttery smooth and I love using it. Over here you have the tried and true. I've been with Android since the beginning. I had the G1 and I've seen all the incarnations of Android since then. Now you do have the Motorola skin on this device. It used to be called Moto Blur. Now they don't have a name for it, but it still is a Motorola skin. And unlike a lot of skins, it's not very obtrusive, but it is still a skin. So as far as operating systems go, I definitely prefer the Samsung Galaxy Nexus. The next thing we're going to cover is the screen. Now, as I've said before in previous videos, you really have to see this screen in person to appreciate it. It's vibrant, the blacks are very dark, the colors are very vibrant, and it is actually a 720p screen on this device. It's an HD Super AMOLED display, and it's beautiful. The screen on this device is definitely superior to the screen on the Motorola ATRIX 4G. The only drawback is, and it's actually a blessing and a curse, the only drawback is that it is a 4.65-inch screen. Over here on the Motorola ATRIX 4G, you have a 4-inch screen. Personally, I think a 4-inch screen is the sweet spot. But as I said, it is a blessing as well as a curse because the bigger screen real estate on this device really comes in handy when you're doing web surfing. But the bigger screen on the device also means that the phone is bigger. Now the phone here, in most areas on the phone, because this phone is sort of a teardrop shape, if you look at it from the side, and it is concave here, the screen kind of bends inward. But it's mostly thinner up here than it is up here, and the Samsung Galaxy Nexus here is mostly thinner than the Motorola ATRIX 4G, except when you get down to the bottom here. But as you can see, it's a larger phone. So it's going to be a larger device to fit in your pocket, and ideally I like the 4-inch screen better. Now, as I said, you have some cases where the extra screen real estate really comes in handy, but again, this is a portable device, and on the whole, I think the portability of this wins over the Samsung Galaxy Nexus, even though the screen is much better, the quality of the screen. So it's sort of a split decision on this one. The screen quality is much greater over here, but I like the portability of this phone better. So the next thing we're going to cover is what's under the hood. Now, the Motorola ATRIX 4G has a 1 GHz dual-core Tegra 2 processor in it. The Samsung Galaxy Nexus has a 1.2 GHz Texas Instruments OMAP Cortex-A9 dual-core processor in it. So the processor in this is a little bit faster, and it is pretty much buttery smooth on this device. It's very smooth, very beautiful. This is not by any means slow. The Motorola ATRIX 4G is not by any means slow. Still a very capable phone, even though there are now faster processors on the market. So even though this device has a faster processor in it, in actual day-to-day functions, I don't notice any slowness on the Motorola ATRIX 4G. So it's pretty much a wash there, and also both devices have 1 GB of RAM in it. So in this category, it's pretty much a wash. Even though you're dealing with an older phone here, and the performance edge does go to the Galaxy Nexus, but not so much where I have to make the jump. Now, both devices have front and rear-facing cameras. Both rear-facing cameras on the devices are 5 megapixel, and this device actually has a dual LED flash, whereas the Samsung Galaxy Nexus only has one LED here. Now on the front-facing cameras, you have a 1.3 megapixel camera here, and you have a 0.3 megapixel camera here. So this is a much better camera on the front-facing camera on this device, but I don't use it that much that it's not a definite reason why I'd have to rush to an upgrade to a new phone. Now both phones have the dual mics, they have the volume rockers and the power button. Where the difference is on this phone, the ATRIX 4G actually has a micro USB port and a micro HDMI port. On the Galaxy Nexus, you only get a micro USB port. Now while I have both phones turned on the back here, you'll notice the speaker on both devices. The speaker is here on the Motorola ATRIX, and then the speaker is here on the Samsung Galaxy Nexus. Surprisingly, on the Samsung Galaxy Nexus, the volume is pretty low. Even when the phone is cranked up to the full capacity, I don't really hear this phone ring a lot, where I do hear this phone in another room. And that's very useful. And the speakerphone on this device is much louder as well. So it's a slight disappointment to have such a high-end phone here with all of its great features, because this is, let's not make any mistake about it, this is an incredible phone. But the one thing, if I had any negative to say about it, it is the speaker. The speaker's kind of small here, and it's pretty low, at least in comparison to this phone. So as far as the speaker is concerned, the ringtones and speakerphone is where that comes in handy. This is definitely a superior device in that regard. Now the Motorola ATRIX 4G is storage upgradable, so you can actually put a micro SD card in it to upgrade the storage capabilities of the phone. You cannot do that on the Samsung Galaxy Nexus. Personally, I never fill up my phone, so it's really not a factor to me. You have a 32 gigabyte capacity over here, and you have a 16 gigabyte capacity over here with the capability of putting a 32 gigabyte micro SD card in it. I've never filled up the 16, so neither of that matters to me, so it's not really a factor to me. So what do we have so far? I prefer the screen on this device to this, but I prefer the size of this device to this. I prefer the speaker on the Motorola ATRIX to the Samsung Galaxy Nexus, but I prefer the operating system on the Galaxy Nexus to the Motorola ATRIX 4G. Now, when I think of which phone I'm going to be using for the next year, the operating system is definitely a big factor. As I said, I've been with Android since the beginning. I had the G1, so I know Android from the first time it was commercially available. And I've been through all the upgrades of the operating system. And without a shadow of a doubt, Ice Cream Sandwich is the best version of Android on the market. I love the fact that they got rid of these buttons and now they're accomplished through software buttons. I love the interface. I love the folders that you can create. It's buttery smooth, it's more intuitive. I really like Ice Cream Sandwich, and it is a big factor. But another big factor are the actual logistics. I have Verizon Wireless here, I have AT&T here. And honestly, I have comparable coverage with both devices. I live in a state where both AT&T and Verizon have comparable prices and also comparable coverage. The only difference here is you have 4G here and you have 3G here. Even though this is the HSPA Plus, the souped up 3G, it does not compare to the 4G on this phone here. So that's another factor. I love the 4G speeds on this phone. But as I mentioned, there are a lot of logistics that go along with actually signing a contract with a carrier. Most of the people I call on the phone have AT&T as their carrier. So calls to them don't count towards my minutes. So I can easily get by with 450 minutes a month here because I really don't use the phone much with people who do not have AT&T. Over here I also have the 450 minute a month plan, but I think I'm going to run into problems. So I'm probably going to have to up this to 900 minutes. So there is a price difference right there. So this phone is going to cost me more than this phone is every month. Now, no matter how much I love Ice Cream Sandwich and how much I love this display on this phone, paying extra every month is a definite factor to consider. Is it worth it? Now, while we're on the subject of Verizon, I'm really not crazy about the fact that they're not supporting Google Wallet. I am all for Verizon having their phones, their Droid line of phones, and customizing their Android phones. But this is a Nexus phone, and I owned the original Nexus 1. I bought it straight from Google, and it was a Google experience all the way, through and through. No one tampered with it. It was all what Google had, all of Google's services. And this is the latest Nexus phone. It's the third phone in the line of the Nexus phones. And it should not be tampered with by any carrier. I don't care. Now, the final thing I'm going to factor into my decision here is, if you're a fan of my channel, you know I purchased the Asus Transformer Prime, the Asus ePad Transformer Prime. And right now it runs Honeycomb, but sometime early January it's going to be running Ice Cream Sandwich. So if I do keep the Motorola ATRIX 4G and get rid of the Samsung Galaxy Nexus phone, I will still have a device that runs the latest and greatest version of Android on it. Even though it's going to be a tablet, it's not going to be the phone, but I will still have access to the latest version of Android. So it's been a lot of back and forth. Which phone am I going to keep? Which phone is going to go? And I'm going to have to say I'm going to keep the Motorola ATRIX 4G. And the reason behind that is, like I said, I do have a tablet that will be running the latest and greatest version of Android. For me to realistically switch to Verizon Wireless, even though I love the 4G LTE speeds, even though I love the Samsung Galaxy Nexus device, and I love Ice Cream Sandwich, it does not outweigh the fact that I'm going to pay less on this per month, have adequate service for my needs, and have a phone that, although has been eclipsed with better phones on the market, is still a very capable device. And besides, I love this fingerprint scanner here. I love this feature, and this is the only phone that it's on that I know of. Now, I do love Ice Cream Sandwich's face recognition, but I think the fingerprint scanner is a little bit more useful. So that's my scenario. But that might not be your scenario. If I was in the market right now and I wasn't tied down to any carrier, I would definitely go with the Samsung Galaxy Nexus phone because it is the latest and greatest version of Android. It's got a beautiful screen and it's a really good phone. And right now you can get some great data packages on Verizon Wireless. You can actually get a 4 GB plan for the price of 2 GB. But for me, like I said, I'm going to stick with the Motorola ATRIX 4G. And besides, I have a feeling with the Motorola merger with Google coming up in the next couple of months, it's going to be finalized in the next couple of months, and Ice Cream Sandwich just hitting the market, there are going to be some cell phones that are going to come out for AT&T that will run Ice Cream Sandwich, and I might get my hands on one of them. Who knows? The Samsung Galaxy Nexus might come to AT&T. You can already get a version on AT&T if you buy the unlocked version and you import it from the UK. I think you can actually get a version on Amazon.com for about $749. So if I wanted to, I could already get the Samsung Galaxy Nexus on AT&T minus the 4G. But like I said, I have a feeling that I'm going to be able to use Ice Cream Sandwich very soon on my next phone. So for right now, I'm going to stick with the Motorola ATRIX 4G. It's a very capable phone still, and it's going to suit my needs. But like I said, if you're in the market to get a phone right now, an Android phone, and you're not tied down to a carrier, definitely go with the Samsung Galaxy Nexus. So that pretty much does it for this video. I will see you guys next time.